Welcome, everybody. My name is Brad Antle, and we are just so thrilled to have Alexa Swabey here with us. Every day, 12,000 people experience homelessness in Toronto. And so that's something that gives churches like ours a pause to say, well, what can we do to be part of that and to help reduce that? Alexa Swabey is the manager of Foundations and Community Giving at Fred Victor. She joined Fred Victor team in June 2022 and is responsible for managing foundation and faith group donors. With several years of fundraising experience, Alexa has worked on major initiatives such as the Ride to Conquer Cancer, benefiting the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, and was part of the philanthropy team at Sunnybrook Foundation. Passionate about Fred Victor's mission, Alexa enjoys contributing her expertise and positive energy to support its dedicated donors and help drive the organization's work to end homelessness and support people in rebuilding their lives. So with that, can you please put your hands together and welcome Alexa Swabey. There we go.
Thank you. Perfect. Yeah, oh, you're right. It does have a bit of a punch. Okay. Yes, thank you so much for the great introduction. And yes, I'm Alexa. And so I will be presenting and talking about Fred Victor and what we do. But I do like to have a bit of a discussion. So I've kind of allotted more time for questions and talking after the fact. So when I go through the PowerPoint that I have, and it'll be a pretty broad overview of what we do, some of our updated projects that we've just launched, and then just to allow for a lot of time for questions, comments, conversation, and things like that. Amanda, so I wanted to mention this because this is pretty big. Fred's Walk, as a lot of you know, is our big event that we do every year coming in the spring. And I wanted to just acknowledge the fact that your participation has been quite impactful, and it's a little cut off here, but that's okay. You guys have raised well over $5,000 in the couple of years that you guys have participated, and we're really, really grateful. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and just say thank you for doing your part, being a great team. Yeah, pretty there. And just really acknowledging the impact that, being a part of an event like this, for the past 2 years, and raising a decent amount of money to really go directly towards our programs has been quite impactful. So thank you so much. Thank you guys. Moving next forward. So just acknowledging that Fred Victor's mission is to improve the health, income, and housing stability of people experiencing poverty and homelessness. And that is really what drives all of our programs that we have, and at the strategies that we use in terms of the strategies that we use to implement those programs. Go to the next one. So who we are, our goal is to end homelessness in Toronto. It's a very big goal, but we really want to work with our supporters, with our partners, to make sure that we can accomplish that. Because as Brad pointed out, that there are 12,000 people each and every night experiencing homelessness. And we do actually believe that the number is quite high, much higher than that, because there are people that experience what we call hidden homelessness. So people that are, sleeping on couches and sleeping in their cars, and just people that are couch surfing from place to place to place. So we do estimate that the number is actually higher, which is pretty sad. And for Fred Victor's purposes, across our 25 locations, we serve roughly 3,000, it's actually closer to 4,000 now, people every day, through a variety of entry points. So I just want to talk about a brief history in case people that don't know our history. So we are pretty old. We actually started in 1886 by a woman the name of Mary Sheffield. So she started a Sunday school for what she called rough and neglected boys. And I guess that was the language back then. And she really just wanted to start a mission to really create a place of a welcoming place for people that were outcasted, in a sense. And actually one of the volunteers that she had, a very devout volunteer, was a man by the name of Fred Victor Massey. He is the son of Hart Massey. Hart Massey, the Massey family is very big in Toronto's history. Places like Massey Center, Massey Hall, Hart House, all things named after him. Pretty big influence in Toronto. Toronto's history. So Fred Victor Massey was Hart Massey's son. And so Fred Victor volunteered often with Mary Sheffield. And when Fred Victor passed away, around the same time when Mary Sheffield wanted to actually have a flagship location, Hart Massey was the providing the financing for that location and said that I will help finance this if you name it after my son, who's recently passed, and hence the name Fred Victor. So that's the very brief history of Fred Victor. Go with that one. And as we talked about, the problem, unfortunately, has still kind of remained the same even over 130 years later. People experiencing poverty and homelessness every night in the city. Just, we see it, whether it's people using the TTC as a place of shelter, people sleeping on the streets and encampments, under ravines, things like that. So it's pretty, it's a big challenge that the city is really trying to overcome. And unfortunately, COVID has exacerbated it quite a bit. And we're just really working to really alleviate that problem. So as I mentioned, we have over 25 locations across the city. So it ranges from shelter and respite all the way to permanent affordable housing. We have some of our programs that help with food security, income security, mental health and addiction support, as well as some of our drop-in programs where people can, get food, do their laundry, take a shower, use the bathroom, and really just build community in a lot of these locations. And something that is really, really important to us is, we want to provide shelter and we want to provide housing, but we also want to make sure we have the wraparound supports to really support people. We don't want to just house them and say, okay, you're good, you're on your own. No, we want to make sure that you're set up for success. So I really touched on it, and it's really rooted in our mission, our 3 pillars: housing, health, and income. Really, all of our programs all feed into one of these 3 pillars. So housing, making sure people are sheltered, and ultimately finding them permanent housing. We want to make sure that people have the healthcare that they need, whether it's getting a meal because they haven't eaten, getting mental health and addiction support, different counseling, even just primary care. A lot of our people they either don't go to the hospital at all, or sometimes go to the hospital too much. So just making sure they have appropriate healthcare, and as well as income support. So if you need, access to meaningful employment, training to further accomplish some of your employment goals, we want to make sure you're supported with that. So I'll go through each one pretty quickly. So housing, well, not how quickly, but so housing, as I mentioned, we've run the full spectrum. There's a full continuum of housing, all the way from emergency respite and shelters. So those are our lowest barrier locations where people can come in. There's no barrier really that's affecting them. Anyone and everyone can come in. If they're full, we will make sure to find a place for you. You can get a meal, you can get access to some of the caseworkers and support workers that are there to really assess where you are. And if you are open to and motivated to access other supports, we're there for you. We have women's only drop-in as well that I want to mention. That is a specific location for women, non-binary folks, and trans women, where they can come in. Again, it's low barrier access. Anyone is welcome, and we'll get you the support that you need to really get you to, whether it's further shelter, whether it's further housing, whether it's different access to supports. We want to make sure you're set up for success there. And we also have our other emergency shelters, Edward Village Hotel, Bethlehem Shelter, and our Fatima House. And then I think the next one talks about transitional housing, as well as that kind of messed up there, but that's fine. So our traditional housing and our affordable housing. So our transitional housing is really, as it sounds, we want to transition people from shelter to getting to housing and giving them the supports that they need. I'll actually mention our 145 Queen Street East location that has transitional housing. Those people are dealing with concurrent disorders. So whether that's a mental health challenge, as well as an addiction. So they need intensive supports, and they need to find housing that is appropriate to the support that they need, because they're going through kind of a lot. And so our staff work very, very hard and very diligently to make sure that those people get the support that they need to get housing that is appropriate for their needs. And into our affordable housing locations, we have quite a few that kind of got a little funny there on the slides, but we have, I think, roughly about 9 permanent affordable housing locations. So these locations are permanent. People that live there, they can live there forever. basically. And then as people move out, because there's natural turnover, we can then get other people in those locations at affordable rates, whether they're subsidized rent geared to income, different things like that. And at the bottom that you really can't read is our housing access and support services. So I talk about that because it is an essential program that is finding people housing that are in shelters or living on the street, and giving them that case management support that they need directed and individualized to their needs. So that team actually provides a tremendous amount of support and really looks at the person as a whole, meets them where they are. So if they are, living under a bridge, they will go out to that bridge and go meet with them and make sure that they are connecting with them, building that relationship and getting them to shelter and ultimately housing. We call it HAS for short. Our HAS program has about a 98% success rate to housing people and having them stay housed within a year, well, at least a year afterwards. So they boast a pretty good success rate because of that intensive support. Okay. So next is health. Our health stream, again, it's things like just health promotion, mental health and justice. People that are, dealing with the court system, but being in jail is not the most appropriate place for them, especially if they're dealing with mental health crises. So we have a team that literally works with the court system to make sure that people that are experiencing mental health challenges, they don't end up in jail. They actually come and do a program with us. And it works as it diverts them from clogging up the system and really getting them the help that they need. We have harm reduction services, our concurrent disorder support services, drop-ins, and food programs as well. So as I mentioned, like at our Regent Park and Moss Park locations, we have our food program there. So you can come there 5 days a week and get a free meal. There's no questions, there's no sign up. You just come and say, I'd like a meal, there for you, So we try to keep a lot of our services as low barrier as possible to make sure that anyone needs it can access it. And next is income. Again, it's providing people with the training that they need if they do want to go into a specific field that they may not have training in quite yet, giving them access to training that they have. The one thing I do want to highlight with our income, so we have our employment training services department that covers all of our income needs. We have a really great peer program that it actually helps to staff the warming centers that we run. So for the winter, the city asks us to manage warming centers and operate them. We are operating 3 warming centers at this point, the largest ones in the city, and they are all staffed by peers. So peers being people that have experienced poverty or homelessness themselves, and they then get training. They do a 12-week training program to make sure they are just set up for success, and then they are then staff in those warming centers. There's so many benefits to it. I'm sure you guys understand, but like just making sure that these are people that know the experience of being in a shelter, know what it's like to be there, and then can relate to the people that are currently accessing those services. And it also gives those people just it empowers them, it gives them the confidence to then, this is like, an employment experience that they can then build off of and attain more. So really, really proud of that. Go to the next one. And I wanted to highlight partnerships because as great as we are, we cannot do it by ourselves. And so we work with, I'll highlight government, of course. So we are blessed to be working with all 3 levels of government. Of course, the City of Toronto is our biggest partner. Well, because this is the city that we're in and it's the city that we serve, but we do get support from the federal government and the provincial government as well. And a lot of the stuff, for example, some of the newer locations that I'll talk about in a minute, I think almost all of them 2 out of the 3 are done with the City of Toronto, which is great. Other agencies, so other shelters, other housing organizations, other health teams, we have to work in partnership. So as great as Fred Victor is, we don't do everything, So the things that we can identify another organization that is really experts on, we will always make referrals and they will refer to us as well. So we have to have that open line of communication, open partnership with those other organizations and agencies. And some of the different coalitions that we are a part of and Particularly our CEO, Keith Hambley, is able to sit at a various amount of tables. So, for example, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, the Shelter and Support Board Advocacy Coalition, Toronto Shelter Network, just other like advocacy tables, partnership coalitions that really are working towards what are the solutions that we all need to homelessness. And difficult DC, you might see some of our ads, and that is become from partnerships like with places like Outage Media that we can use their platform to spread awareness of the work that we do. And so lastly, I want to talk about new housing because it's exciting. So we just finished after 2 long years of getting it off the road. We just finished our Kingston Road location out of the East End. So this location is going to bring 86 units of permanent affordable housing to the city. It's going to, have different supports on site. So what was really great about this location is that we took, if you know Kingston Road, it has a lot of those old motels. We took one of those old motels, renovated it into 22 units of permanent affordable housing. So we're able to use that existing unit just with renovations. And then this build is a modular build. So it means that construction happens fast, which is great because we need housing fast. And we were able to create this, is what, 4 or 5 story building, that people can live in. And my team actually got to tour it last week to really see the rooms, and they're very nice. And people are going to actually start moving in, I think this week, actually. So it's really, really exciting. That's one of the new, thank you. Yeah, stop that. We can go to the next update as well. So Queen Street East, brand new as well. This is a 30-unit building on the East End as well. And so we actually purchased this unit. So there are currently some tenants living in it. And there's I think about 5 units that are vacant. So us purchasing this unit actually means that it will remain affordable. As we all know, often with older buildings, developers will come in and they'll purchase it, they'll tear it down, kick out everyone, and then build condos that are 3, 4 times, 5 times the price, and no one can afford it really. So what we did is we decided we're going to purchase this building, make sure all the tenants that live there can remain there, and we will not raise the rent above the 1 or 2% that we can do. And as new people move in, if they are on income supports or they're on any kind of social assistance, they might be rent geared to income, they might be subsidized. We're gonna keep it affordable. So our mandate is to basically keep all these units affordable, no matter who's living in them, and making sure that we, as people move out, as people normally do, that maintains that affordability. So we're really, really excited about that. That closed, I think, 2-3 weeks ago. Again, very exciting. And then the last one I want to talk about is Dunn House. So Dunn House is out on the West End in Parkdale. So this is 51 units of a permanent affordable housing. Now this actually is interesting because it is in partnership with UHN. So we launched this actually in October, and it's basically recognizing the challenge that the emergency departments were facing, where people were coming to the emergency department and coming there hundreds of times in the span of just months, right? And so recognizing that these people do need assistance, but the emergency room is not necessarily where they need to be. And so with UHN, we're basically saying these people actually probably just need housing and some supports with their housing, and we can then just stabilize them. And even being just open in October, there's already been some pretty good outcomes with people stabilizing and just getting, because they have an on-site nurse practitioner, psychiatrist, nurses, all those medical staff, and the research component that UHN is leading on this is going to hopefully help to facilitate more of these models just throughout the country. So it's pretty innovative. It's the first of its kind that we're really melding like housing and health and how we can really provide supports for people that are really, overburdening the healthcare system and really getting them the housing, supportive housing that they need. So that's really, really exciting as well. So that's kind of the new housing updates that I have. I think that's the end of the slides, if I remember. Yeah. So it's done in partnership. So a lot of the funding is actually coming from the city. A lot of the land itself is actually owned land by UHN. So, because it's actually right next to one of their locations in Parkdale. It's on Dunn Avenue, Dunn House. And we also have funding from United Way. And then like there's a little bit that comes from us as well. So it's like kind of these four big funding partners that are coming to it. But I think a lot of it, the city, this is something that the city, like this Dunn House, I was told was like thought of that idea maybe like 5-6 years ago. And it's just through various conversations. And I will say, Dr. Bazari at UHN has been really trying to put it forward. So he's really, done really good work to trying to make it happen. And, us being chosen as the operator of that and making sure that we provide our expertise in housing and UHN provides their expertise in healthcare. So yeah, the funding model definitely mostly from the city, but also UHN has provided quite a bit and will continue to do so as well. Yeah, housing is part of what keeps people healthy for sure, and identifying that need, because how can you really focus on your healthcare when you're living on the street, right? How can you really focus on, especially I will note that at our Queen Street location, like at Queen and Jarvis, a lot of people will come in for just wound care, like wounds, because they're living on the street, they're living in a tent, they don't necessarily have the supplies to really take care of wounds. And like some of the nurses were telling me that they'd see wounds that just kept not healing because they come in once and you've been seeing them for months and they come in again with the same wound that, so it's like just providing that kind of primary healthcare. Wound care is huge. Yeah. So to your point, yeah, housing really is being prescribed as healthcare because it is, you need to have good shelter to really take care of yourself, right? My response is that UHN is really going to be taking the lead on the research component of it, because that's really what they're trying to look at, is that how is this going to impact the healthcare system? How is this going to impact how many less people are going to be accessing it, and the outcomes that are going to come from providing that intensive support once people are housed, and seeing how much that helps them stabilize, how much that helps them, get better medical outcomes and things like that. So as I said, we started in October, and already some of the staff like have anecdotally shared some of the outcomes that they've seen. But I know UHN is really taking the lead on the research component. And hopefully, as the years go by, even by the end of this year, they'll be able to report back on some of the findings that they've had. But already, like, it's a pretty big project that is going to be taken on, but the research component can go really far from beyond just this one location, right? I mean, the need for housing is pretty high, like, and I will say that most of our staff, the biggest challenge they have is the lack of housing in Toronto. And though we have, like I mentioned, some of the locations that we have a permanent affordable housing, it's not enough. The wait list for, as people know, the wait list for housing is like there's 80,000 people on the wait list. And so like, though we have our parts where we have, the 51 units at Dunn House, we have the 86 units at Kingston Road, 30 units at Queen Street. It feels like you're not even making a dent in 80,000, right? But doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Doesn't mean that we can't keep pushing forward some of the innovative solutions that we have and getting more locations up. So, I mean, to answer your question, like in terms of the housing need is great. And getting, I like, me personally, this is my personal point, maybe take Fred Victor aside, I don't necessarily think we have a housing problem. We have an affordable housing problem. For me personally, I get a little annoyed when I see condos after condos after condos after condos being put up, and they cost like 800,000, $1 million. And it's like, but where are the affordable units? Where are the units that people can rent? Like not everyone's, path is home buying. People just need to be able to live somewhere. Like rents that, are under $1,700 are like not existing anymore. You know what I mean? And so I, the city really needs to prioritize like they did, 40, 50 years ago in affordable housing. And, we hope to see that with Olivia Chow and, her being the mayor, but, it's a slow process because affordable housing has not been prioritized for the last, however many years. So the housing need is great. Our capacity to do so, we are very fortunate. Fred Victor, jumping back into Fred Victor now, outside of my personal. Fred Victor is really fortunate that we have become quite large, right? Our capacity has grown compared to some of the other housing organizations. So we can take on different projects, like the fact that we've launched, at least these three projects that I just mentioned in the past like 6 months. Not every organization could do that, right? And so we're fortunate enough to be able to build these partnerships and make more affordable housing happen faster than others. And we're constantly, just being bigger and bigger and taking on even more things. So I think it would be great if our work was redundant. I think if we didn't have a homelessness crisis, it'd be great if we just, we're put out of business and we didn't have to do what we do. I think that'd be great. I think it's unfortunate that we just find that the need keeps growing. I think in terms of our perspective, like our employment and training services does a really great job of providing that support that people need to get employment. Like, I mean, to your point, it might not necessarily be, for whatever reasons, it may not last for forever. It might just be something temporary. It might be a few months, but our goal is to really get people towards meaningful employment and to stay employed, right? And I think something I'll also mention that's happened in the last couple of years is the influx of newcomers and refugees and how we've had to really, especially in our employment and training services, they were telling me that, about 60% of their clients in the past year have been newcomers and refugees, which is like the year prior is probably less than 10. Like, so it's become something where like, we're not a settlement agency. We don't claim to be, but we've had to really adapt our services to offer those kind of supports. So kind of different, obviously, from universal basic income, but just our ability to really pivot to the needs of the populations that we're serving. Like we created to support newcomers, we created a whole new position that was just focused on providing newcomer support and just letting them know, here's how to navigate the Canadian job market. Here's how to make sure your resume is tailored to what Canadian employers are looking for, and also we have our job developer that works with a lot of employers to then say, I have these people with these skills that have come into my office. Are there any opportunities for them that we can really make sure that there's a connection there? So, I think universal basic income is like something that is really, really important. And as much as we try to advocate for that, through the many different partnerships that we have and the coalitions that we have and working with government, that I think is unfortunately a bit like it's a process. I think it's going to take a bit longer than all of us want it to. But I think, yeah. And I think with just going back again to the refugees and newcomers, like we're working to really cater to people that, like, not every newcomer needs to be in using our services in our opinions. And a lot of it, unfortunately, there's a gap in when they come to the country and then they're not being educated in the way of what they need to know, what to expect when they get here. I'll just say a really quick story and then I'll answer your question in the back there. One of the workers told me that there was, they had someone that was, preparing for a job and really coming in, and they wanted to come see their caseworker that was at one of our locations, and they're like, it's so expensive for me to get here. It costs me like $9 every time I get here. And he's like, aren't you taking transit? He's like, yeah, but so I have to take 3 buses. So then I pay the $3 here, and then I pay the $3 there, and then I pay the $3 there. And then you're like, oh, because you didn't get a transfer. And so just something as small as transfers is something that if you don't grow up here, you don't know that, right? I would think, yeah, you just pay for every bus. Why wouldn't you pay for every bus? And it's like, no, that one trip could have cost you $3, but now it cost you 9 and it didn't have to. And so it's just like a little example of just the little things that we don't even realize that we know that when you're new here, you don't necessarily know. So it's really setting those people up for the expectations and like, what do you need to know to really be successful here? I agree. I agree. I think a lot of the times, they aren't able to showcase their skills in a way that is relevant to Canadian employers, unfortunately. And they're just, all that you said is like to sum it up. I hate to sum it up because you said it really beautifully. Is just that they're newcomers. Unfortunately, our immigration system is not set up in a way that is really beneficial and really supportive to people that are coming to this country. And not even really recognizing that they've obviously left their country for a reason and they've gone through a lot. And I think people don't recognize the traumatic events that these people may have gone through. Being pushed out of their country in a lot of situations, especially people that are refugees. And they then can face harassment, as you mentioned, and things like that. And so though we on the global scale, Canada prides itself on being a very welcoming country, and I think we are, but I think there's a lot of work to be done with improving the data, the actual logistics of our immigration policy, I think. Yeah. I remember our CEO Keith being asked a very similar question, and I think there's constant learnings from like an international scale. Like, I mean, I'll be honest, I personally can't speak to it. Those are above my pay grade, but those conversations do happen. And I think we can really take like all the different innovations from international organizations and even, just see how they do things, especially also like even in the States, like, it's interesting, like looking at the States as well, just because they're obviously our closest partner. And I know there's been some interesting relationships recently, but prior to that, just looking at some of the ways that they've addressed some of the homelessness issues in various states. And I think a lot of this is just about information sharing and seeing what can be used and relevant to our context, right? Toronto is, very unique in so many ways, like any other city. And so it's really just looking at, like I look at things like our peer model, where we're taking people lived experience of poverty and homelessness and providing employment opportunities for them. That is something that is I don't think it should be innovative, but it is. It's something that, it's so beneficial on both sides. And so, yeah, I think to answer your question, but maybe not really answer your question, is that like there's so many opportunities of learning, so many opportunities to see how others are doing it and doing it well, and see if we can adapt it to our context, right? I think maybe similar to you, like I live basically off of St. Clair, and I remember seeing they're gone now, but during COVID, like almost an encampment like by the Home Depot on St. Clair and Keele, and I was like, I've never seen that. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think, Fred Victor, like we are primarily downtown, but us opening up some of the locations on the East End, like Scarborough, even going to Parkdale, and even our Edward Village Hotel shelter is at DVP and 401. So we do expand beyond the downtown limits. And so I think unfortunately, we do have to keep doing that, just because the need is it's spreading, to your point, beyond downtown. And it's just showcasing the need, right? Because I feel like years ago we used to just think, oh yeah, like people experiencing homelessness are just downtown. They're on the subways, they're just downtown, like, that's where they are. But that's not really the case anymore. And we're really trying to adapt and just expand where it's best, where things are, where the need is, but also where there's opportunity. Because I think there's a lack of, I don't want to say lack of opportunity, but there's not a lot of space. Our city is big. Our city is big, and it's full, and there's just, there's all these challenges that are presented to us, but we're going to keep trying to push forward and keep trying to either acquire different buildings or create new buildings where there's space to really provide housing and provide affordable housing to those that need it. So yeah, what was once what we thought just a downtown issue has really expanded beyond that, unfortunately. Yes. Like, yes. No, great question though. And like the short, easy answer is yes. The thing that I love about the staff that we have, the really excellent staff that we have, is that we do not leave people high and dry. We don't leave people hanging. Like, we are there, like, to really support people in the way that they need it. So whether it's to get them off the street into a shelter and then from a shelter to housing, we're there with you along the way, right? And so we want to make sure that people that we meet you where you are, we build a relationship with you, we build up trust, and we get you to the next stage, like whatever that might be. Not everyone has a direct path. We want to make sure we follow that path that's appropriate for you and it's going to set you up for success in the best way. So yes, we want to make sure that people that are looking for housing, we then make sure that we are finding the housing for you, and we're making sure that it's appropriate, it's in the community that you like, it's, all those supports and all those things that are important to everyone in this room. We want to make sure that it's important for our clients as well. I would say in the formal sense, not really, but like informally, yes. I've heard many stories of people that, have come from like BC or Alberta or even on the East Coast as well. And they've either come to Toronto purposely or just found themselves in Toronto and don't have the supports, don't have anyone there with them. And I want to say we treat everyone the same in that the meet you where you are piece is so important. So we want to, what is the baseline? Where are you at? What do you need? What is your context? Where are you coming from? Really establishing, getting a good assessment of those needs and then being able to build on that. So if someone is from out of province, though they are Canadian, they don't really necessarily know what happens in Toronto and how to function here. And we want to make sure that they kind of know the ins and outs of things, and that, it can feel like their new home if this is their permanent, what's going to be their home forever. So yeah, I think in a similar way, yes, I mean, the way that we support international people is slightly different, than how we, support other Canadians. But in terms of the support, we want to make sure that they know how to access things, and building up that community and those connections, right? Because it's super, super important. So that's a really good point to bring up, because we do get people that are from different parts of Canada that, Canada's big and we are not all the same and we function very differently. And so when you come here, you kind of have to know, how do you move around a big city like this? And what's the best way to go about things? And, if you do, have a specific group or activity or interest that you want to align with, how can you get that? And, just really setting people up for success and really building that network of community supports, I think, is really essential. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. So maybe most of you guys know about the Christian Resource Center, the CRC location in Regent Park at 40 Oak Street. We basically merged together in January 2020. Great time. So that was through partnerships with United Church, and United Church has still been a very good partner. A lot of my job is managing, as you said when you introduced me, managing a lot of our faith group donors, and a lot of those are United Church groups. And I will say, I'll also point out, so we have that one location that it was once a church that they renovated to become permanent affordable housing, as well as our drop-in community center. Also our Bethlehem United Church shelter at Caledonia and north of Lawrence area. So yeah, another just a partnership there where it's a shelter, and the church is still there, but it's we could not have that location without that really strong partnership. So all that to say, the partnerships with United Church United Church and United Churches across the city has been tremendous. And I think that will really continue. Yeah, it's, I could go on more details, but it's like, yeah, the partnership's there and it's pretty great. I must say. And just really looking even beyond, just like various faith groups and how we can really, help build those relationships. I guess I'll also note that I was saying this to you earlier that, across the street from our Kingston Road location, West Hill United Church, they actually recently put together a bunch of welcome home starter kits, for the people that will be moving into Kingston Road next week. So those kits include like pots and pans, cups, cutlery, linens, what else is in there? Like garbage cans, like everything you need to move into a new home. They put together like a bunch of those kits, which is so helpful with really setting these tenants up for success because they don't really have those things. And so they come into a fully furnished home, which is really, really nice. So, just another way that United Churches have been able to really come together and really just support us in a variety of ways that really, and it's based on what they can do and what they are motivated to do and what the people part of their congregation are really empowered to do. So yeah, the partnerships with United Churches runs deep and hopefully will continue to. Yeah, I only yeah, there's many churches that have actually helped put together some of those kits, and like I won't lie, that's like managed by my colleagues, so I only know about a few of them. But yeah, to your point, a lot of the churches have put together things like that. And yeah, we're really fortunate to have a really strong base of church groups that do support us in our work. It's really, really nice to really see. And we really try our best when we are opening up new locations to really get community feedback, and just to know what they're thinking whether it's a shelter, whether it's a housing location, whether it's a drop, like whatever we're going to put somewhere new, because we're coming to you and going into your community, right? So we want to make sure that the community is okay with it. I think, yeah, there's a lot of people that feel like, what is it, the NIMBY folks, not in my backyard. Yeah, I think, I get it. I get that perspective. I think in terms of speaking to people about like what's best to say to people that, are a bit hesitant to having a shelter in their community, people that just don't want it there. I think, just understanding that sometimes shelters go up and you have no idea a shelter's there. Not every shelter looks like, needles everywhere and, and people just like not every shelter is looks the same and will impact the community the same. And so if it's a well-run shelter, like you may not even really know it's there, right? And especially if it's catering to youth, to your point, these people do need somewhere to go and they've gone through a lot. And I think just I kind of reason that looking at someone's humanity is so important. And it's something that we often don't do with people experiencing homelessness and people experiencing just a lot of trauma and crisis, that, see the person for who they are as a person, understand that if they had a choice, they wouldn't want to stay in a shelter, right? It's not something that people want to do. It's not something that people choose to do. It's something that they have to do, right? And so just looking at someone's humanity is really, really important, and just understanding that these people, like with the proper supports, well, hey, they're no different from you and I. They just maybe had one or two, significant instances where they've ended up where they are. And it's the shelter's job, it's the staff's job to really build them up and get them to, achieving their goals, right? So like my thing is just looking at the humanity and kind of explaining the purpose of a shelter like this, especially one for youth. Young people, these are your future. These are people that, we're providing intervention at a time where it's going to actually make lasting change. So why wouldn't you want to help them? Why wouldn't you want to support them? Like I said, a lot of the shelters, there's one shelter that we have. I mean, it does cater to women, but there's no signage on it. There's no, like, it looks like a house. And for all intents and purposes, it is a house, and so, there's so many of those people will be amazed at how many shelters are actually in their neighborhood that they'd have no idea about. right? And for various reasons, we don't necessarily publicize a lot of those locations for safety of the people that are using it. But, the stigma that is associated with things like shelters, things like transitional housing, as you mentioned, I'm not going to say they don't exist. Like bad things happen, and we can acknowledge that. But at the same time, I would say don't put your anxiety of what you think is going to happen when you don't really know, right? Like I'd be really worried. Like I would be curious to know what the worries are of people. Like what do you think is going to happen to your kids if they see someone experiencing homelessness? What do you think is going to happen? And I will say, I'll speak to two programs that Fred Victor has, because I think off the top of my head, specific organizations that are focused on preventing homelessness, I don't really know any. I think a lot of the organizations that are focused on ending homelessness do offer preventative supports as well, because especially once someone does find housing, retaining housing is another beast.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that people are set up to retain housing as well. The two programs that I want to mention that Fred Victor does is one is our child and youth program that we have in our family housing locations. So that started about 7 years ago. And we highlight the fact that it is preventing homelessness for incoming generations. So we're really providing kids, like obviously it's an after school program, it's fun, they have a good time, but we also recognize the situations, their home situations can be a bit unstable, can be, situations where you're not too far away from experiencing homelessness. So you want to make sure that we're engaging the youth, engaging the children in programs that it's like, hey, here are ways you can, really be set up for success, and really encouraging and encouraging their success, but preventing any situations of, experiencing extreme poverty and or homelessness. I also want to acknowledge our other program called the One Step Up program. So that is something that we started. It's actually a donor funded fund where our staff can quickly access funds for those that are either about to be evicted or about to move into a new place. Its whole purpose is to provide quick access funding to those that need it, especially in situations where, let's say they lost their job and they can't make next month's rent, they might be evicted. They can access that fund in a matter of days and prevent that eviction. So that's something that we created, I think maybe 3 years ago, because staff had basically said, it's great that we're providing housing and supports to people retaining their housing, but there are some situations where it's like they need like $2,000 to maintain their housing. They don't have it. So how can I get it? And we created that fund with some awesome donors that support it, and they can then, within, if they need it on the Monday, like I would say by the next week they can get it. Whereas like other programs similar that are offered by the government take weeks, if not months. And then it's like by the time they're already evicted. So, that's one of the innovative things that we were able to come up with to identify from an identified gap in programming that we had, and we were able to find the solution for it. So those are some of the ways that we prevent some of the prevent homelessness or prevent evictions and stuff like that. So I hope that kind of answers your question, Lisa.